Now it's time to add the base coat on our wolf. We need to put a nice base coat down before we start adding hairs. Now the color I'm going to use for this is our 704.7 Rembrandt Soft Pastel. Now I have broken this in half and I have sanded the edge down. And here's the piece I'm going to use. I'm going to use light pressure to add color all over the wolf except for the eyes and the nose. We're going to use a cross hatch motion, and I can't stress enough to use a light touch. Doesn't have to be perfectly within the lines, and it won't fill up the tooth of your paper, which is why we're using such a light touch. You might see some uneven places on your velour, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just going over the ears and over the face. We're going to work in this area right now. You can turn it up on its end to get in tight places if you like. Go around that nose. Get a little bit over here on the paws. Now we need to add some more colors to our wolf. They have a lot of brown in them, so I'm going to use my 411.3, which is a burnt sienna. It's kind of a dark brown. This time, be sure and sand off your edge. Wipe it off so that you don't get dust that you don't want on your painting. So a lot of wolves have brown in their coats. This is part of their coloring. So I'm going to add some brown to this wolf. And I can see a lot of brown in his ears. Using a very light cross-hatch motion. The corner of his eyes, over the top of his eyes. Now I'm going to switch to a warmer brown. I want to make it a little warmer. So I'm going to switch to actually a new pastel, 253. I have sharpened mine to a point. You can use the pointed end or you can use the rounded back end. I want to add some warmer color. So I'm going to use it to add the brown on his nose. Just going back and forth lightly to add a little brown there. And around his eyes. In the ears. It's quite warm. This is a beautiful wolf. He has a thick winter coat. It's going to be fun to paint. Let's get some more brown up in these ears. It's looking pretty good. I think I want it to be a little warmer on the top of his head. I'm going to add some darker gray colors. I think with him, I'm going to use a medium gray tone instead of going straight to the dark tone. So what I have is a 704.5. I have a half stick here that I've broken half, and I'm going to go over him with a little bit darker gray. Light touch. That's better. Now let's add some darker gray. For that, I'm going to use my 7043 Rembrandt, and I'm going to use the end, the little round end. I've sanded it down. I'm going to carefully add some darker color. This time I want to be more careful where I put it. I'm going to put some in the ear. You can see that the little white hairs I drew in earlier are showing through the pastel. Can you see them here? So it's really important to put those marks in early on so you can find them later. Let's go inside this ear. Now, the reason I use the end instead of breaking this one in half is this gives me more control. So I'm being careful to go in the same direction as the fur. Now, gray wolves have this beautiful black mask, dark gray to black mask around their eyes. So I'm carefully putting that in. It gets very dark between his eyes. It gets dark over his eyes. Let's get that other eye. A little area under the eye. I see a little brown area under his face that I want to add. I didn't get it earlier with the brown, so I'm going to go back to my 411.3 Rembrandt, burnt sienna. Add some brown here. There's also a little bit on this side of his face, so I'll just go ahead and put that in, and we won't have to worry about it as we work around the wolf's face. And then a little 7043 dark gray. It looks pretty good. I think I want it a little bit darker down here around the nose, so I'm going to use the 411.3 over the 253 new pastel cocoa brown that I put down. The cocoa brown warms up the 411. You kind of have to work with this to get it the right amount of dark and light for you. that you need in order to bring out the colors in your wool. Now I'm going to add some darker browns around the eye, but because this 411-3 is kind of clunky and hard to draw with, I'm going to switch to a smaller pastel, which is a 353 new pastel, cordovan, which will work really well around the eyes. There's some dark color there, so I'm just going to put a little bit around the eye. And over on the other side. Because the lights are just not going to show up if we don't get the darks in. I think I'm going to add a little bit in the tops of the ears. I'm doing this very lightly. Over on the other ear. I love this color. It's kind of a purpley brown. It's useful for so many things. Let's go under. His face down here where he's got his little face laying on his legs. Darken that up a bit. It's looking very nice. Okay. When we come back, we'll add his eyes. Now it's time to add some more color to our wolf. It needs to be darker before we add the final hairs to the coat. So I'm going to take my 305 Spruce Blue New Pastel, but this time I'm going to use the blunt end, and I'm going to add the blue to the areas that are going to be black in the final painting. So I'm going to add some blue very softly. I'm going to use both ends really. So I want to add some around his eyes. I'm going to go back and forth, lightly adding color. We're just going to keep building layers of color until we get it just like we want it. Just like I use this blue underneath the black on the rim of the eyes, I'm going to use it underneath the fur to make it richer. We want a rich, thick, lustrous fur that looks like we can just reach in and run our fingers through it. Let's put some up in the ears. You can use the pointed end to get into those hard to reach spots. And we're still just working right in the face area for now. Another thing I'd like to tell you about is using a piece of black paper to rest your hand on. As you work around your wool. This is just black construction paper. I can rest my hand on it. Putting some more blue up in the ears. This makes just a much more complex, richer color. Now, I'm going to, I think I'm going to add some more gray. For that, I'm going to go back to our Rembrandt 7043. Just looks like he needs to be a little grayer in spots. It's a lot better to work up to this gradually than add a lot of color at first and then it'd be too much. I'm going to add some more gray. It's a lot harder to take it off than it is to put it on. Put some over his eyebrows, under his eyes. Now over that blue, I'm going to add just the tiniest bit of Rembrandt black. This is 700.5 black. Now I've already have one that's sharpened. I have a little piece that I'm going to use on its side, just lightly, very lightly. Go over the mask area. Then the final color I'm going to use for this stage is Mars Violet Rembrandt 538.3. I have a little piece. I'm going to use it up on its end. This is a dark violet brown. I'm going to use it to take these browns a little darker. A little richer. Up in the ears. I know it's looking really dark. It's going to be exactly the right tone to make our light hairs pop out. I'm pretty much going over all the dark areas with this. Very lightly. Next, we're going to add some details.